And I'll only take 2 or 3 hours of your time today talking about my music. No, I'm going to talk to you about multi-percussion. There is a handout that has a couple pages of text and then there's a page of music with it. So this will make a lot more sense if you've got that. That way, with the music, you can circle all my mistakes. And I'll be playing that today. I'm going to start the session today with a commercial. The commercial is for a podcast, actually that is hosted by my son, Colin Campbell. He's based in Chicago, but he has a podcast on iTunes. You can download it. Obviously, it's free. He's got about 30 episodes called The Throne, a drumming podcast. So if you're a drummer and you like hear other drummers talk about what they do, he's got 30 episodes. He's interviewed every drummer in Chicago, plus reviews equipment. There's some comedy skits he does. He also has a thing he calls kind of a rudimental of the fortnight, where you can download some exercise sheets and he'll play and work on technique things. So the Throne and Drumming Podcast, you can Google that and go to the website, or you can just subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. So first thing I'm going to do today is play for you. I'm going to play a piece that and talk about multi-percussion today. Multi-percussion was a big part of my education when I was in school, and I think it's one of the most underserved areas in the percussion education realm because it generally takes a lot of space. There's not a lot of great pieces out there. There's probably the least amount of literature for it. And the pieces that are out there, a lot of are novelty pieces. But I think it's probably one of the most important areas for a percussion student, somebody who is looking for a career in music, to sort of master some of the language of. Because everything from Broadway to playing percussion with Wilco involves multi-percussion. So over the years, I've kind of have some things that I pass on to students, and I will share some of those with you today. And usually when I start multi-percussion with an incoming freshman at college, I start with UDOW number 1 from the Mike UDOW book. It's one of the books that I have on the end of page 2 and talk about on there. So I'm going to play for you first Mike UDOW's Etude number 1 from his book. thank you. So think back for a minute, everybody in the room, to when you first started percussion, like percussion lessons. And you started taking lessons, working with a teacher. And how many lessons did it take the teacher? How old were you? How many years did it take before somebody taught you about the sound you made on your instrument? If I think back to my lessons, it took till I got to college. I started when I was 10 years old. The first time someone talked about the sound I made on my instruments was when I got to college. And my teacher was big into, wow, you're making great sounds in your instruments. What are you talking about? It says they hit it on one, I hit it on one. You know, it says forte, I play forte, should I play louder? But talking about tone and talking about the connection you have to making musical phrases, and talking about your touch and talking about those kind of things, really for percussion pedagogy, people are just now starting to talk about it. We've got such great players, like all the students you saw today, all their teachers. You know, they grew up in that kind of environment. But, you know, it wasn't until I got to college where I really started understanding concepts of sound and music. And so I'm going to share some of those basic concepts I have, what I work with my own students, what I think about when I'm teaching multi-percussion. Because, you know, for me, that's one of the most difficult things to play because you're playing across different surfaces. You play on marimba, all the bars are made of wood, snare drum, it's skin, and I didn't do it here. I started with a very basic thing, but multi-percussion, some of the literature mixing cymbals, wood objects, and you saw a lot of that up here today, skin. I mean, a drum set could be considered a multi-percussion instrument, but having to treat it as one instrument instead of a collection of 10 different instruments, to me that's the thing that is one of the most challenging aspects of in the percussion world, is how to take a collection of instruments and make it sound like one instrument. And this is the point I start at, and I'll kind of run through that today. I was also fortunate enough to be part of a team of authors that we built a textbook from scratch on a band method called Band Expressions. It was published by Warner Brothers, and now it's Alfred Music. And when they hired me, they said, we have difficulty integrating teaching musicianship with a band, with a percussionist. We don't understand that language because the other authors were wind players. So when we get to the band and you say, band, today we're going to talk about legato. So percussion, if you could do your homework, we're going to be up here playing music, and then when we get to the part where we need you, we'll call you. So, you know, these jokes are as good as it gets, guys. So you got to look inside. But I remember going in band myself, and it's time to play our warm-ups and our scales and our long tones and work on our core of our sound. Percussion, you guys, start your math homework, and we'll get to you in a minute. You know, there was nothing for the percussionists to do. So I tried to think of a way when we got this textbook to come up with a language, come up with a vocabulary that the percussionist could understand, because, you know, when you think about music and you think about phrases, we can't really sustain. You know, we can't artificially keep a line going because, you know, everything we play, even a roll, is just fast single strokes or fast double strokes or, you know, reiterating a stroke. There's no wind to support a line. There is no bow to support a line. So we have to find ways to work on our touch and our sensitivity to kind of make those things, put us on equal footing with the other people that play musical instruments. And in some cases get caught up. You know, I just played two drums for you. So if I can't make music on two drums, how am I going to do it on, you know, Stockhausen Zyklus or, you know, a drum set or anything? I've got to, you know, start with a basic, work on my vocabulary, work on my, you know, developing that musical quality. So I pass up the music so I can illustrate some of the things I talked about. But I'll start with my outline here. Change my reading glasses. First of all, you know, percussion is probably the only instrumental family where you get to be creative. You get to have some independence because the composer doesn't always tell you what they want. Here, okay, this piece calls for a wood block and a triangle. Well, let's see, I own 6 triangles from 3 inches to 12 inches. Which triangle? Wood blocks, there's, sitting in the office across the street, there's at least 5 black swamp, different sizes. Which wood block? So wood block, or symbol. How many symbols are there? You want dark, you want bright, you want thick, you want sustain, you want it to splash. And so you've got to make a lot of decisions, more than any other instrumentalist. Play clarinet, half note, B flat. It's going to sound the same, right? It's going to sound like a cat. Is there any clarinetists in here? Good. This is going to be good for all my clarinet jokes. This will be perfect. But it's going to sound the same. The color that comes out is consistent. The color that comes out of woodblock is completely different. If you play with a wood stick, it's going to sound different than if you play with a rubber mallet. So you have a lot of choices to make. And then when you compound it with a whole set of instruments, I mean, on marimba alone, how many people here play marimba? Raise your hand. How many? Keep your hands up. How many people have more than 1 pair of mallets? How many people have more than 2 pair, 3 pair, 4 pair, 5 pair, 6 pair, 8 pair? Hands are still up. There's hands still up because they all make different sounds. You all have a lot of choices to make. So your choice of instruments and implements is a very personal thing. You get to put your stamp on your sound for whatever you're playing. It's more personal than any other instrumentalist. Okay? Sometimes they're restricted. Sometimes your instrument helps you. Sometimes you help your instrument. There's a lot of possibilities here. So the performer must select specific instrument sizes, tunings, implements. As a composer, doesn't specify that. And for a lot of us that are mallet junkies, which means, and college guys, this is especially true for you, is like how many have a mallet bag? How many have any empty pockets? No hands. Okay? So you want to fill it up. And you're filling it up with different sounds, and you're collecting mallets, because each one makes a different sound, and combine that with your technique, and you have even a bigger vocabulary of things. So be aware of what's in your mallet bag, the shape, the weight of the implements, how they affect the sound, the timbre. Large-headed, soft implements or heavy mallets produce darker tones, and small-headed or light mallets. Let me show you that. So just by using a different implement, I get a completely different sound. If I have something that's fast and articulate, I might want to use my stick that's going to get me a brighter sound, a wood stick. And if I want something that's going to be sustaining and kind of round and funky and dance-like, then I use the Jim Campbell, the signature stick from Innovative Percussion, available in the lobby for $9.95. Autographed for $7.95. So, okay. But, so you have a lot of choices to make on the sound you want to produce. So it's not just cut and dry. So first, be aware of everything that's in your stick bag, what it sounds like. I'll share a story with you. That can backfire on you. I had a band director when I was in college, whose name will go, unsaid. I don't want Larry Livingston to think I'm talking about him. So, and very, great conductor. I think he's doing the Bands of America Honor Orchestra or whatever this year. He was a great musician, great conductor. I learned a lot from him. But when he was younger in his career, he was my wind ensemble teacher, and he knew everything about every instrument. So for percussion, he really wanted us to know this is the sound I'm looking for. He was really into sound. And at the time, when I was your age, there was only really one mallet manufacturer everybody went to at the time, and that was Musser. So if you had Musser yellows, yarn or rubber, they were soft. If you had Musser blues, they were medium. If you had the Musser reds, they were hard. That's all you could get, And so we'd be conducting and he'd stop and he'd say, use the yellows. Okay. He'd use the yellows. Stop percussion. I want the reds here. Play with the reds, whatever you're playing. So this was close to Chicago. I went to school in DeKalb, Illinois. Close enough that we could go to Frank's drum shop. Best drum shop in the history of percussion industry. You'd go down there and they had stuff from all over the world. And I went in there one weekend and I said, could I get the xylophone mallets? I want the hardest mallets you have that are yellow. Okay? Yeah, these Bruno mallets, these are great. You know. Okay, can you give me the softest reds you have? Yeah, we have a pair of mallets we got here from France. These are real soft, rubber, and they're red. So we'll go back to the next rehearsal, and Larry's, use the reds here. Reds. He said, no, the reds. And hold them up. And we switched them out on him, you know, like, oh, those mallets always, use the yellows here. They're the hardest xylophone mallets, and he wanted the softest. I'm like, yeah, yellows, we got the yellows. So, and I guess my point of this story is what you want as a percussionist, as a teacher and a director that you're working with to say, can you have a lighter sound here? Can you make this darker? Can you make this more staccato? And then you figure out how to do that. Okay? There's not one mallet that can solve stuff, you know. But you tell me the sound you want. It's my job to find it, and my job to make it. And I'll go through my stick bag. I'll go to change my technique. I'll pick a different size snare drum. I'll find it. You want it crisper? I'll make it crisper. Don't tell me what sticks to use. It's my job to do. So, you know, that's the challenge I like in percussion. That's what I like, you know, developing in students, and that creativity and curiosity and problem solving. That's really what it's kind of what makes it fun for me. Is still, you know, it still makes it fun. Is solving problems. You know, percussionists, you're highly organized and you solve problems, and that's the fun thing about it. Okay, so let's talk about a learning sequence. We only got 3 more hours here, so bear with me. Single instruments. So first thing I try to do is find, again, this is the pedagogy for multi. So I try to find things where we're just working with a single instrument and we're changing playing areas and working on how many sounds can I get out of a snare drum, and how many sounds can I get out of a snare drum. I'll show you at the end. I'm going to play a multi-piece that I wrote that involves a snare drum. You play different places, you have different sounds. Then, what does it sound like when I have to change instruments? You know, how do I organize the setup so I can include all these things and have an efficient setup? And then third, changing implements. What do the different things sound like? The mallets, we already talked about that. What kind of sounds can I kind of have from my bag of tricks that'll help me? All right. Then technical considerations. You got to design an efficient setup, and the instrument should be placed at a height that you got to be comfortable for everything. So, you know, drum set players that put their cymbals way up here, you know, for show. That's just part of the style. But you know, I go to band rooms, especially middle school band rooms, and I see the drum set. A lot of middle schools seem to use, instead of a percussion section, they use a drum set for some reason. You know, because one guy can keep the song together. And the most popular drum set that every manufacturer has is like I'll just call it the export kit. It's because it comes, either Pearl has it or Yamaha or somebody, but it's the ones that are made in the Philippines or Japan, exported, and it's got a 22-inch bass and a 22-inch bass with 2 toms. So if you're an 8th grader or 7th grader and you're playing drum set in band and you got a 22-inch bass, where are the toms going to be when you sit down? They're going to be over your head. So you end up making them like a wall and almost putting them flat. Brian Morgan, just go your head up and down. Is this true?
Yes.
Yeah. So the kids are too small. So these entry-level kits, which they can afford, so all the heads have gouges in them because their sticks almost going, instead of rebounding, it's like hitting a wall. So if there's any drum manufacturers out here, I know there's one out here, but you know, should have an 18-inch bass or 20-inch bass that fit the student, you know, instead of the price. But you know, put everything within reach, whatever you're playing. Make an efficient setup. You shouldn't have to stretch for anything. And, you know, I've seen Brian Mason's piece up here, where the guys are running around the instruments and the doppelganger piece and stuff. Everything was right there. They had to do. Things were set up. And that's what you want to go for. Design is set up. Choose a specific playing area. Every instrument has a sweet spot, what you call a sweet spot. So find that. Aim for the correct beating spot, the correct playing area, not just the correct note. So the first thing in achieving a consistent sound in your instrument, any instrument, marimba, is to play the consistent area. And from there you can make alterations, but have a consistent area first. Timpani especially. You want to make sure that you're playing in a place that's going to give you a good tone quality. And what's a good tone quality? On any membrane, there's three basic playing areas. You got the center, which has the lowest fundamental tone with minimum sustain, whether it's bass drum or concert tom, or snare drum. And then you got at the edge, which is bright and has a little more sustain. And then you got kind of halfway, which has a blend of the two. So when you're playing, you've got to make sure that whatever sound you want, you're not just, your target isn't the drum itself. So when I played that last multi-piece, I wasn't shooting for the drum. I was shooting for this area. So my balance was always equidistant from the rim in the area that I wanted to play from, the area I wanted to get tone from. So you just have to have regard, because when I play across the instrument, I've got one hand that's near the rim and one hand that's in the center. It's going to sound different. I'm not going to be able to kind of sustain a line or make the rhythm clear. So that's a technical consideration. So and choose the correct scrape or strike or technique for every instrument you're going to play. So I kind of categorize percussion. The definition of percussion instrument is an instrument you strike to make a sound, but you don't just strike it. You also scrape it like a wiro or a brush. Knowing the technique on how to get a scrape sound. Also shake. There's instruments we play we have to shake. Maracas, sleigh bells, and also crash technique, where two instruments hit together, whether they're claves or cymbals. You sort of have to know what's going to get the best sound and where the sweet spot is on the technique you're using. Okay, visual considerations, which means the movements that are in response to the music. I just finished reading a book by David Byrne, and who was with the Talking Heads, recorded with Brian Eno, some albums. And one of the things he said is that our brain has, when it sees something, like if you're watching television and you see somebody a race, or you go to a track meet, your neurons fire and your feet want to move too. He said with athletic things, it doesn't always trigger the muscles, but it does fire those neurons in your brain. And my brother-in-law visited me last week, and he was a soccer player all throughout high school, college, and even plays in like an adult league now. He says sometimes he'll be watching a soccer match, and somebody kicks the ball, and his foot hits the coffee table. If you think about those kinds of things, that happens. But in music, it happens. When you go to a concert, when I hear a concert, I have a drummer going, the first thing that happens to me is my foot starts going with the hi-hat on 2 and 4. And I'm not even noticing my bass drum goes. Or, you'll kind of be tapping your legs, drumming on your legs. How many people, when they were growing up, or even now, the parents say, stop tapping on the table, stop tapping on the counters. Yeah, right, all of us growing up. But it's that, our neurons fire. Music makes us carry it out. You go to a piano concert and you're not, some people, they're moving their fingers. You look, wow, you see people doing it. Dance is even bigger, And art kind of brings out that side of the muscular response to those neurons and fire. But, you can take advantage of that. I think the reason percussion is so visual is because it communicates more. It communicates more to the audience. So I try to take advantage of that. And all music has an energy factor, and I try to find that energy factor and bring it out. In the case of the U-down etude I played for you, you know, to me it dances. It dances and it grooves, and there's a lot of clustered notes. There's groups of 3, there's groups of 4, there's groups of 2, and I try to bring that out. And I try to sort of move with that and move my mouth with it so that I can, and I'm responding to the music that way. I think that's a very, plus it helps me keep time. And also, silence is active. Silence is, you know, a rest is just active silence. And, you know, a rest is part of the music because it's the end of a line or the beginning of a line or a pause in a musical thought. It has to do with the music. So I'm always responding to the silence too. Sometimes, you know, another thing about percussion is a couple things. Again, I talked about the composers. They don't tell you which mouths to use. They don't tell you which wood block to get. They don't tell you which snare drum. And they also don't tell you when to stop the sound. They tell you when to start the sound. The cymbal crashes on this beat. But it doesn't say, often doesn't say let it ring. Is it long? Is it short? You know, if you look at a professional orchestral player, sometimes you're going to see pencils marked everywhere. Let this ring, cut off on 2. Because they played it enough, they heard the orchestra, they know how to shape their part. But the composer didn't tell them that. They did it. A lot of times you'll see eighth note rest, eighth note rest, and and you're playing bass drum and it's supposed to ring. Boom, boom. It doesn't mean boom, boom. It's just that's how that publisher makes rhythms clear. Tells you when to start, but they never tell you when to stop. So you have to use your imagination. You have to listen to others around you and what they're doing, or use your imagination and creativity when you're playing a solo part. So that's one thing, and especially on timpani. Rest doesn't always mean to dampen. Okay, sometimes you can choke the life out of the music when you dampen on rests. They're there to help make the music clear, the notations clear. Okay, let's talk about articulation and style. Expression is a personal thing. It's a combination of instrument variables, and I talked about that already: balance, instrument choices, etc., etc. And so there's a couple of factors that go into making your sound. Okay, what do you call this part between my thumb and the first finger? Fulcrum. Everybody agree? Raise your hand if this is a fulcrum. You're wrong. That's the grip point. I'm going to drum now. Where's my fulcrum? Where's my fulcrum? Okay, where's my fulcrum? It can be the fulcrum, but it's where you grip the stick. It's not always the fulcrum. And the fulcrum, when we play percussion, it changes depending on what you're going to do. So it can be the fulcrum, but it's not always the fulcrum. So when you grip the stick, how tight you grip it or loosely is going to help determine your sound. The tighter you grip it, it's going to be a different sound. Let me get another stick. Different sound. From the sticks, you're going to get a different sound on the instrument. It's going to affect your sound. It's going to affect a lot of things. And you can use that to your advantage. I'm not saying you always are loose, you're always tight, but if you know that the grip and the pressure affects the sound, you can control it by what I'm going to show you in a second. Volume. How high or how fast from the instrument, how fast you go. That's going to affect the volume. Not only speed, but also stick height. And touch. The type of attack, the downstroke, and the type of rebound, the upstroke, those are the factors that affect the sound. Now go to that second page, because this is where I wanted the percussionists to be on equal footing with the wind players. How do you play legato on a percussion instrument? Which is a directive to perform a certain passage of the composition, smooth or graceful, connected style. So how do I teach percussionists to play legato? First, you use a fluid full stroke. You maintain a light touch at the grip point. You use a fluid full stroke. By full stroke, it means a natural rebound. You start up, you end up. Even if it's soft, it's a fluid stroke. It doesn't stop. Okay? And you're creating a legato attack. And then when you start to pile up legato strokes on top of themselves, then you get a legato style. Now, softer implements and changes in playing area can also enhance the articulation. So if I'm playing in the center, it's not as legato as if I play at the edge. So it's smooth, it's connecting, I've got a light touch. I'm rebounding, I'm using lift, I'm using the full stroke. That gives me a legato style. Staccato. Light and detached. Doesn't mean short. Staccato does not mean short. It means light and detached. A distinct manner. So to get that, I maintain a firm touch at the grip point. That helps me get a brighter sound. Like, this is way brighter than that. So it helps me get a brighter sound, which sounds more distinct, which sounds lighter, and it's detached. Then I maintain a firm grip. I use a quick downstroke and a quick upstroke to create a staccato attack. And if I also, on top of that, use dampening, I use harder implements, meaning this is more staccato than this, because you hear the brightness. It's a lot more separated. And changes in playing area. So if I play at the center, it's going to be more staccato than if I play at the edge. So all these factors go into achieving sound. So if I want to play with the same pair of mallets, I'll go between legato and staccato, just improvising. So just in my grip, in my stroke type, in the quickness of my stroke, I think of staccato strokes a little bit quicker. It helps get brighter. It takes you to the core of the mallet. If you take a yarn marimba mallet and you play with a very fluid stroke, you get a nice legato connected thing. And if you play with quicker, with a grip on there, you're actually getting to the core of the mallet quicker, that rubber core or that phenolic ball, whatever in the yarn, and it sounds better. Now I got a two-tone mallet because I changed my grip. So you can get more articulate when you just change your grip and your stroke type. And let's talk about tenuto. It means to perform a note or a chord of a composition in a sustained manner for its full duration. Here, I've changed my grip. I use a more supportive grip with the entire hand. So this is light. This is more supportive. Guess what? It makes the stick longer. My stick went from being this long, from where my fulcrum is, to now, the whole hand, I've got a longer fulcrum. I've got a longer lever, and now I have a more tenuto, a darker and broader stroke. So that helps me make a little bit more tenuto. Again, changes in playing area, changes in sticks. If I was going to play tenuto, I would use a softer mallet, like this multi-mallet. If I wanted to play staccato, I'd use a harder mallet. And you can find timpani manufacturers that say staccato mallet. That means it's hard. Legato mallet. That means it's soft. You know, really. Then marcato. I skipped by that. Just marcato is a style playing that means marked. So marcato means accented, stressed. And then basically I use my full hand supportive grip, so I have a more marked sound, more weight behind what I do. This is a light touch. This is a lot of weight behind my sound because I'm using a bigger lever. And then I also use quicker strokes. So I get the combination of weight and brightness, and that helps make it more marcato. So those are terms that you can use as a percussionist to kind of assimilate yourself to more musicality. Skipping down to phrasing here, musical instrument expression is most obvious to the listener on resonant percussion instruments. People that take auditions on snare drum, they're going to audition for school or an orchestra audition, they're going to play on a snare drum that's going to be very crisp and articulate, and sometimes even put a handkerchief or a towel on to make it as dry and crisp as possible. But when you play solo music, you want that drum to ring so that you can hear things connect. You don't want everything to sound dry. You want things to connect. I said, give me a couple of toms for this, and I want it as big and resonant as possible because I wanted to show you that you can really dance on these instruments. It sounds like it rocks. It's cool. But a lot of drummers, they look at somebody doing a recording in the studio, or see their pictures in a record jacket or a magazine in every studio, and they got tape everywhere in their drums. You know, it's because the engineer in the booth wants a dry response so that he can add the reverb mechanically at the board and get the sound he's looking for. The more resonant the drum is, he can't do his job, and it bleeds off in other areas. So you see that, you say, I'm going to tape all my drums at home, and then it sounds like you're playing on boxes. Okay, so when you're playing live, you've got to open up your instruments so that you can sound more musical. Play resonance. Pay attention to the speed and the shape of the line. Play with direction when using rolls. Group notes together, and I need to wrap it up here, but look at this piece. If you look starting with the first line, the first thing I do is I think, what are the groups that are there? And I'll play, and what can I do musically to interpret this? So one of the things I'll do, I want this piece to really dance, really be festive. So I'm going to mark the meter, which means I'm going to emphasize downbeats of measures and downbeats of groupings. Sometimes the groupings go with the measure, sometimes they don't. So if you look at the beginning, I got 4, 4, then I get to a 5, 8. I see that as a 2 and a 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1. Then I got 3, 3, 2, another 5, 8, 2 plus 3. So I have choices sometimes. And you look at the 7, 8, which is the third bar of the second line. It's all one beam. So I'm going to try to only put one emphasis in the beginning of that bar, because I want you to feel the meter. Then I have an accent. No, it's the first accented note. But if I'm stressing the downbeat of every measure, how do I make a difference between an unwritten accent, like a stress that I put in, which sometimes we refer to as an agogic accent? How to make a difference there to mark the time, mark the subdivisions, and when I get to an accent, how do I make the difference? Well, I do it by using weight to mark downbeats. Tell me what this meter is. Anybody? I don't know, I can't tell. Because I'm playing even. I mean, I'm the most solid technical drummer I know in the world, right? So if I want to play even, I'm going to play even, right? Okay, I guess I'm going to go out that. Oh, but if I want to do every 4, I'm going to add weight. 3. So I just use my arm for those. It gives me extra weight without being really accented. So let me play the first couple of lines on one drum, kind of monophonic. When I got to those accents, you see me turn my wrist. That gives me more speed, makes it sound brighter. So my accents come out bright, and my unwritten accents or my agogic accents, and when I want to stress the music and phrase my own way, I use my arm for that. Arm, wrist. So I'll use different muscle groups to help enhance the music on this, and that helps me with the phrasing on there. Okay. And like I said, this is multi-percussion is an important part of what I think a student ought to know. And I've listed some books there that I use and I recommend. And I'm going to leave you here I'm going to play one piece for you. And it's from this Music for Multi-Percussion book, A Worldview, that I wrote with Dr. Julie Hill, that's at the University of Tennessee in Martin. And we each wrote some solos and some duets in here. And it sort of follows my approach of a couple things. Just introducing to you sort of one technique at a time. I'm going to play Cycle, which is the second solo in the book. And it uses different playing areas in the snare drum. In fact, it uses 9 different playing areas and 9 different techniques. To me, that's multi-percussion, even on one instrument. I'm trying to get all these 9 different sounds out. And so I'm going to use all that to show you how you can think about one instrument and getting the most out of. But there's solos in here. One's written in the style a Japanese taiko group, like Kodo with a small, and I wanted small instruments. I wanted small instrumentation. Because the last thing I want to do is say, we're going to get going on multi-percussion. So let's do you know, a piece that uses 16 instruments. By the time they set it up, the lesson's over. You know, so I try to find educational material that'll get my concepts across 2 toms, a snare drum, 2 toms and a cymbal, so that we can establish a vocabulary without having to, like, you know, build a house. And then as they go through, as they matriculate through college, they're playing more challenging pieces, bigger instrumentation, and they use the concepts that they learn with the pieces with smaller instruments to master their approach to what the larger ones did. So I'm going to play for you this piece called Cycle for snare drum. And I'll just tell you a little bit about it compositionally. It starts with a 4-measure cycle, because it'll come back again, and it'll come back again, and it'll come back again. So I start with the 4-bar cycle, and then the next section after that is variations based on that first measure and the sounds I make there. Then I play the cycle again, and then I do a section based on variations of the second measure. And I play the cycle again, and I do variations based on the third measure. And then cycle again, and variations based on, give her a door prize. And then there's a little coda that ends it. So, so I don't get my stick caught in my sleeve, I'm going to actually take my jacket off here. So, Brad, do you want to come get my jacket? Door prize, what's up? I'll launder it first, I promise. So this is cycle, and it's, like I said, from the book. Thanks for paying attention. If you've got any questions about this stuff, ask Brad, because I don't take questions. Okay? Switch back to the music readers.